Hey guys, I'm Jake and welcome back. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Green Hell, which is a single player survivor game that is currently on Steam for just under $30 Australian. Now Green Hell was published on Steam as an early access title on the 29th of August 2018 and it was developed and published by Creepy Jar, which I may say straight off the bat has a pretty epic logo. Now once you load up the game, you'll be met with a pretty standard title screen with the top option being story, and it's actually currently grayed out, and I'll get into why that's an issue shortly. So selecting the only real playable game mode of survival, selecting the normal difficulty and jumping straight in, we are greeted with a relatively decent sized loading screen. Now thanks to the magic of editing, you guys don't have to sit through the whole thing, but this lasted just under a minute. Now, once we've actually loaded in, it's day one, and we're given a little bit of an introduction into the characters and what exactly they're doing in the Amazon rainforest. Now, for the sake of the video length, I'm not going to include all of the dialogue between the two characters, so from here on out, it's going to be mainly focused on the graphics and gameplay. Now speaking of graphics, I have to of course mention just how amazing this game looks. It is so beautiful and the detail is absolutely perfect. There is not one thing that they could have done to make this any more aesthetically pleasing. I mean the dynamic lighting and just the population of the different colors with the birds, as you can see on screen now, flying around. It just absolutely amazes me that more games aren't this beautiful. Now moving on to the game mechanics, as you can see by the icon that just appeared at the top middle of the screen there, most of the communication at this point in the game is done via a walkie-talkie, and by pressing the button what you do is bring up a menu with several choices of what your response is. However, from my experience, this doesn't actually affect the story, it just gives alternate responses from Mia. Now, one thing that is done really well is the movement and interaction controls. They run off the same scape as most other PC games, given WASD to move around, mouse to look, space to jump, etc. So it is really intuitive and most players will grasp that quite quickly. So it's at this point that we find out a little bit more as to why the pair are in the Amazon forest to begin with, and it turns out that Mia's actually there to interact with the native peoples known as the Yabahuaca tribe. And Dr. Jake Higgins, which is the character that you play as, is there to not only lend a hand, but also conduct his own research, as he is also an anthropologist himself. Now fast forwarding to day 2, we actually find out a little bit more about the situation that they're in, and it turns out that Mia has to approach the Yabahuaca people by herself. Now this is because they're a bit hesitant to interact with anyone from the outside world, and it is a little bit reminiscent of the Sentinelese, which is a real life tribe of people who have had very little interaction with the modern world at all. And it's also at this point that Mia suggests a romantic dinner for the pair. In order to start this romantic dinner, we are given our first taste of the crafting mechanics within the game with the instruction to create a fire. Now, unlike similar games such as The Forest, when you do craft something, each individual item needs to be placed in a specific area and in a specific order, it's an interesting way to go about it. And you know, after a while you do get used to it, however, initially it does feel a bit weird. Now, as for getting those materials, it follows a pretty standard format of chopping down trees and foraging around the forest itself to gather those materials. And once you have gathered those materials, the recipes for crafting is stored in a notebook, not too dissimilar to the same way it is done in the forest. Now, once we finish creating that initial fire, we're told that in order to light it, we are going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, as the lighter and matches that we ordered didn't actually arrive with us. And with this, we are given our introduction to inventory crafting. Now, as you can see, we've been given a new recipe for the hand drill, and we open up the crafting menu where we can actually go into our different compartments of our backpack to get the necessary materials. Now, in this case, to craft the hand drill, all we need is a stick and a small stick. Place them together on that crafting rock there, and then we've made the hand drill. Now, in order to use it, you just right click, go use, and you need to drop something dry in, such as a bird's nest like I've used in this case, and then it goes through an animation and voila, you have embers to place on the fire.
Now fast forwarding to day 3, we find out that Mia has left by herself to go and start those interactions with the Yabahuaca tribe. And we were also introduced to the smartwatch, which acts as our macronutrient tracker and allows us to see what types of foods we need to eat and when we need to drink water. Now, one of the other functions of the watch is the compass, which is just accessed via scrolling with the watch open. Now, with Mia away with the Yabahuaca tribe, we decide to head north to try and find a tobacco plant for some study. But of course, this goes slightly wrong.
Oh, fuck me.
Fuck me indeed. Now what this fall does is introduces us to one of the other mechanics, which is the ability to inspect our limbs. Now this is done by holding C and selecting the magnifying glass, which brings up each of our 4 limbs, which we can rotate in order to inspect and look for any cuts, bruises or leeches in some cases. Now as you can see here, we've got a pretty nasty gash, which acts as our intro into medicine, which is a pretty big part of the game, as any wounds in the Amazon can pretty easily get infected. And to prevent an infection, we need to make a bandage out of the leaves of the Molinaria plant, which is seen on screen now. And the recipe, of course, has been added to our notebook, which is seen here. And we then open up our crafting menu, place the Molinaria leaf onto the rock, crafting the leaf bandage, which is then placed onto the wound, creating a nice little dressing. Now it's at this point that for some reason we skip ahead to day 32, and this is where shit gets a little frantic.
I need you here. Jake, please answer me.
Mia? What happened? Mia, speak to me. Mia, what the hell's going on over there?
Now, during my first playthrough, I was incredibly excited. I was super keen to see what happens, and then this loading screen appeared. But that's not the worst part. The worst part was this. This popped up, and to save you guys from having to read it yourself, you have completed a tutorial which is part of the story mode that will be available in the full release. Press space to continue in survival mode, with literally no other tutorial.
What the hell were they thinking? This is such a sudden and abrupt way to stop the story that I'm pretty sure I've got whiplash from that sudden, exaggerated stop. Not only does this leave the player high and dry, stuck in a survival game mode with little to no experience, and requiring, in my case, a couple of hours of watching YouTube videos just to figure out what to do. I mean, I can kind of see what they were trying to do, you know, bring people in with the allure of a, well, pretty interesting story so far. But that should be set within the story mode, not as a precursor to the survival section. I mean, they don't have a proper tutorial, which, you know, is fine for most hardcore survival game players. However, for the average player, they're not gonna know what to do. By putting it into survival, you're giving the illusion of a tutorial that does not yet exist. And I will say, the story so far has been incredible. It's definitely drawn me in. I want to know what Dr. Jake Higgins does next in order to try and find and save Mia. I want to know what exactly went down between the native peoples and Mia. However, I'm kind of disappointed that they've done what they've done in the way that they've done it.
Now this is an issue because at this point you're just dropped into survival mode with no additional information except for a few more blueprints that are primarily just for structures. And this is a problem because, as previously mentioned, most players who haven't played a lot of hardcore survival games aren't gonna know what to do here. They're gonna be left stranded with no clue how to proceed, and that's just kinda not cool. But moving on, you survive by eating fruits off trees and picking random nuts off the ground, and after a certain point you can start hunting animals for meat, although you can also find random birds strewn across the ground for some reason, which was a pretty interesting discovery. And depending on where you spawn initially, you can come across this little cave which does have the remnants of a shelter, which was either formed by you or by another previous inhabitant, which this cave does have a couple of good starting items, including these coconuts here, which are used for a source of water, and then after that also they can be crafted into like a water bottle. Now, after raiding that cave, I decided to go and explore and look for some food and water. I also crafted this axe out of obsidian, a stick and some rope, and then upon further inspection found some glowing mushrooms on a tree and thought they looked kinda tasty. Now this is a game where you have to pay attention to the audio, because like right here I was alerted to a snake via the sound of its rattle, and this isn't the only time the audio cues are going to save your life. Like take this for example, it was the roars of the jungle cat that alerted me to the fact it was there. I didn't even know that it existed, and then out of the bushes, yeah, it didn't save my life this time. I kind of got fucked up. Another example is that I was walking through the jungle here and I heard this. And this was my reaction.
Is that a friend?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. They're not your friend at all. And once again, I died, which was my experience with this game a little more than I care to admit.
Now, whilst the game as it stands is a little bit lackluster and is definitely missing a few key components, I definitely think that this game has a lot of potential. I mean, its graphics and aesthetics alone are absolutely amazing, and there is a lot of potential here for the game to grow, especially with its such detail to the minor things, the macronutrients, the leeches, and all of those other aspects of the game that I think could make it absolutely brilliant. And devs, if by any chance you see this, please, please, please make sure that there is a tutorial as an option or as a mandatory thing when you are playing a survival save. And as for the story, keep it up. I am incredibly excited to see what happens next. So, as the game stands, I give it a 6 out of 10. However, due to the potential, I want to bump that up to a 7. And I think once the game is finished and in full release, I will be doing another review, or at least another touch-up, just to see how it's going. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you let me know down below what you think of the video, and also leave a comment if you have any suggestions on videos or games you'd like me to do. With that being said, thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time, and don't forget to smash that motherfucking like button. Yeah, I don't like how that tastes in my mouth.